Let's take a look back at the past. Let's set the stage. As we look at the past, we must acknowledge the Licking River was a major water transportation channel during the Civil War. Now, across the Licking River into Newport, Kentucky, lives Virinda Garland Doddy. She's a local poet laureate, a retired teacher, and a civil rights advocate. Her image was recently captured on the Newport levee floodgates at the Memorial Drive intersection and I-471 exit. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. And thank you so much for agreeing to allow me to interview you today. This is my guest. I'm interviewing Miss Virinda Garland Doddy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is all about solidarity and resiliency. As we had discussed when I had contacted you about this interview, I wanted to get some more information from you. Wanted you to tell your story because your story is going to be part of our historical society archives so that other people can learn about you too, and not just Northern Kentucky. So could you please tell me, first of all, about your lineage? And I would like to know the female side.
Okay. My mother's name is Johnny Nelson Dean. My grandmother, her mother, was named Mamie Mouse. My grandmother had a total of 11 children. The girls were Bessie Nelson Pursley. After Aunt Bessie was Ressie Nelson Richardson. Then Etha Nelson Killam, and Arlene Nelson. They had a sister named Willie Nelson that passed as a little girl.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And tell us a little bit about you yourself. I know that you've been in this community for years. And when I say years, I won't ask you how old you are, but if you'd like to share that, that's fine.
Okay. I'm blessed to be 74 years old. And I say blessed because when I was an infant, my mother at 3 months old, my mother said, the doctor said I would not live to get grown. I'm blessed to have been, I've been operated on 3 times where they were looking for cancer. Thank God I did not have cancer. Back in June 2014, I was in the hospital for a possible heart attack and stroke. Just this past week, my doctor was concerned that due to the height of my blood pressure that I may stroke, but thank God I did not. So I'm very blessed to be alive. I'm very thankful to share my story because I'm in the process of writing a book. My mother came to this area when I was 3 years old. I'm originally from Cope, Illinois. My mom and stepfather, Herbert Britton, along with my 2 brothers, Thomas Nathaniel Carter, he is deceased, and my brother Eugene, they call him Great Britain Carter. We came to this area when I was 3 years old, so that was back in 1951. We originally lived in Cincinnati with my stepfather's mother, Mamie Britton, and his sister Ethel Britton Wright. We left Cincinnati and came to Covington, where in fact my brothers went to Lincoln Grant School for a little bit, and then we went to Newport. I also attended Lincoln Grant for a little bit and then moved to Newport, Kentucky. My mother owned her own home before coming to Kentucky. When we came to Kentucky, we became homeless because my stepfather told my mother, "I'm going to bring you to my home." And in her mindset, that meant you had your own house and you owned your own property like she did in Illinois. And by coming here, since he did not have his own house, we became homeless. I do not at this state call any place home because I have lived in around 26 different places, meaning houses, because they're not homes to me. My home is with the Heavenly Father because I never felt home living in any house. I attended Southgate Elementary School. I was in the last class, had teachers Miss Vine and Miss Patton, but I went to school at age of 3 with my brothers. My stepfather, Herbert Britton, was friends with the teachers and the principal, and since my mother did not know anyone to babysit me, they agreed that I could come to school with my brothers. I was reading at age of 3 before I came to Kentucky because of my brother Tommy Britton. Whatever Tommy learned in school, Tommy taught me. So it really helped out with the teachers at Southgate because when I was in the classroom with Tommy and Eugene, they would give me work to help me on my age level until I got into the first grade with Miss Patton. When they integrated, closed down Southgate School, and we went to 4th Street Elementary, it was a problem for the Caucasian teachers having a young black student being able to read. My mouth was often taped. I was often told there was no need for me to get an education because all I was going to do was do domestic work or work in a restaurant. The students at 4th Street Elementary, it was not very pleasant for them. I witnessed the teachers striking a lot of the students. I've also witnessed the teachers calling us the N-word and the students calling us the N-word. It's sad that a lot of bright, capable adults who are now deceased only went to the 6th grade. After the 6th grade, they left because of being beaten down. I knew better because my mother instilled in us, and my Aunt Ethel and Miss Vine and Miss Patton instilled in me to go as far as I could go in school. And so I truly thank God for them being in my life, to giving me the belief in myself that no matter what I went through, I could succeed.
All right. Well, that definitely is all about resiliency.
Yes.
I mean, having that faith and that belief and that power, that will, knowing that somebody else is there with you all the way, that you have nothing to fear.
Right.
And that whatever you are supposed to do, he's guiding you.
Right.
You know?
And plus, I had a spiritual mother. My mother was a praying woman. And my mother, in fact, this is ironic. When I was 7 years old, my mother says, "Virenda, I know that kids make fun of you and they talk about you and call you all kind of names, and some adults would say I would never amount to anything, but God's going to raise you up." And he sure enough have raised me up. He's permitted me, my faith in him, knowing that all things work together. That's Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 26 to tells you that all things work together for the good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. So my mother worked 2 jobs to support my brothers and myself. And Also, when I became ill at age 7, my brothers supported the family with their shoe shine box. So I came from a stock that believed in working and achieving. When I became a teenager, I was a teenage mother. It's funny, but when I became pregnant with my first child, Sharnetta, she is deceased. She only lived 2 months and 27 days. Then the following year, that was in 1965, I became pregnant with my daughter, Donna McDay Watts. And they were putting girls out of school in Newport. I can say its name. Sandy Jones told me, Virenda, you're too smart to be put out of school. Write a petition. And I went home and wrote a petition, brought it back to school and gave it to a teacher. I believe it was Mr. May, and the rest is history. I was able to graduate from high school. When I graduated from high school, I was the mother of 3 children. It's ironic that the baby that I fought to stay in school with, Donna McDay Watts, is now the Youth Service Center coordinator of Newport High School.
Yes.
And does an awesome job.
Yes, she does.
She is fantastic.
Yes, she is.
And it's funny that she also had wrote a grant for them to have a daycare at that high school, and they did have one for 2 years.
All right.
Yeah.
You are definitely an inspiration for single parents. I'm a single parent myself, raised my son as a single parent. I wasn't a teenage mom, but I was a single parent, so I can identify at least some of those differences when it's you, and you have to have a supportive family, and I hope you had a supportive family.
Yeah. My mother paid the babysitter so I could go to school. My brother Tommy helped me boil the bottles and showed me how to do it. And he said, you can't go to the Civic Center here in Covington to the dances anymore because you got this baby to take care of. But then sometimes he would babysit for me and let me come to the Civic Center to the dances. So I did have support. And also, I had 2 ladies in the community that encouraged me. Willa, she's deceased now, and Myrna Barber, they encouraged me to stay in school. It was a blessing. I always wanted to go to college, but no one taught me anything about college because they thought it was out of reach for me, being that I had children. As I say, a teacher in the 5th grade taped my mouth, told me there was no need for me to get an education. And so when they had the WIN program, teaching young mothers skills to get jobs, I was in that program, and I volunteered at the Cameron County Welfare Department in Covington in Newport on Mama Street. And while I was typing there, a social worker befriended me, and I was telling her about the cases that I was typing up, the decisions that they had made to cut the families off of welfare. And I was telling them it would prevent a hardship, and some of the information they had on the families were wrong. So after about a month or so, me speaking with her, the director came to me and says, well, you act like you want to run my agency. You need to go to college and run your own agency. And I said, but I don't have any money to go to college. And he introduced me to the Pell Grant. And so I went on, he told me what to do, and I went on and applied for the Pell Grant and received it. And in 1973, I enrolled in NKU. At that time, I had Sharnetta was dead, so there was Donna, Lenore, and my son Daryl, who's deceased now, and my son Juan, he was 4 months old. There were many days I did not have a babysitter, so I took my children to the NKU campus, and they sat in the lobby, the three older ones did. I took Juan to the classes with me. One of the maintenance ladies, she's deceased now, Miss Robertson, Lorraine Robertson, she agreed to watch my children while I went to class. Also, a professor, Tony Mazzaro, babysitted my baby son so I could go to class because the professors had a problem with me taking the baby to class with me. So truly, support is very important. I valued the classes that I took at NKU. I was the first Black to graduate from the Human Services Program under Dr. Jane Dodson. And she sent me to a lot of my field places were in the community. I was the first undergrad to study at, it's now defunct, it was called Roman Psychiatric Institute, which is now Talbot House. I also studied at the Lincoln Heights Community Mental Health Services in Lincoln Heights, and also the mental health services that was in the Norwood area.
So you were really working a lot in the area of what they call social emotional learning, SEL.
Yes. And in those programs, my advisor, as supervisor at the Lincoln Heights office, she really got on my nerves because when she would give me clients and I had to go to their homes, when I came back, I had to do something called process recording. I had to write down the conversation that we had, the interview we had, and as well as tell her about the environment, the house. Where did this family, their furniture, where everything was at? And then after I wrote it down and she read it, she would go visit that home to make sure I had everything in place. That's why it really helped me in being observant. To see, like how I saw that your baby had flip-flopped a picture in your living room. She taught me how to observe a room or observe an individual to see what was going on. A lot of people fail to realize that your nonverbal communication tells you a lot.
Yes.
It tells you more than what comes out of your mouth.
Yes. And I'm one of those people, unfortunately, who folks have said, all I got to do is look at your face and it tells it all.
Yes. Yes.
But
the eyes are the window of the soul. And it's the truth.
Yes.
It's the truth. I really value, and then in the social work department, Tony Mazzaro discovered that I wrote poetry. He asked us to bring in something that we did. He didn't care what it was. If it was knitting, if you baked him something, bring it in. And I said, Tony, all I do is I just write down my thoughts. And so I brought it in, and he said, Virenda, this is poetry. So as a result of that, I have written over between 80 to 100 pieces. I'm blessed to have 4 that have been published. A lady that had this Benton Press newspaper, Miss Patricia Fan, she published one of my poems through the Louisville Defender, and I've had several. When Mr. Martin had the Northern Kentucky Community Center through Black History Month, I was always a participant in that program where him and Pastor Fowler would have me on program to read some of my poetry. So, and recently I did a poetry reading at Roping Bookstore in Newport. They also have one here in Covington. And I decided now that I'm retired, I have the time to go ahead and put them in writing. They are protected through the Library of Congress. Each one of my poems have already been protected, but I have not published any of them.
That's great. You've got that copyright on them,
Yes.
which is great.
Yes.
And you have to do those types of things to protect your work.
Yes.
Because you are a renowned poet laureate.
Thank
and
you.
I had an opportunity to hear you through the church.
Okay.
And that was at my late aunt Ann Shanks, First Baptist Cumminsville.
Okay.
You did a poetry reading over there one
Yes.
time for Women's Day.
Yeah.
And I happened to be there on that same program.
Yeah, she always had me on her program.
Yes, so that was another place that
Yes.
you would go to that was not on the Kentucky side, that was on the Ohio side.
Yes.
I do want to ask you, do you have any short piece or any piece at all that you could recite for us today as a part of your interview?
Yes.
Please,
Society
please.
Says I'm Dead. This was written a young man named Everett B. Davis. We called him Bay Brother. Back in the day, Bay Brother would have been in the special need classes. And he was a very talented individual. In fact, he was an artist.
Uh-huh.
And there was things he wanted to do, but due to the limitations, no one gave him a chance. For today, individuals like Bay Brother are encouraged to go to school, to go to college, and people help them get jobs. This is Society Says I'm Dead. I'm young, black, I may be white, but regardless of my color or race, man, I'm dying. I look around and what do I see? All of God's people living in poverty. I want a home, a car, man, and a wife with kids to play in the park. But society says I'm dead. So I walk with my head hung down, looking like anybody's clown. But man, I want a home, a car, a wife with kids to play in the park. Won't you? Hey, what about you? Reach out your hand to help your fellow man. Don't let society says I'm dead when I haven't yet got ahead.
All right. All right. I'll tell you, that is beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean, if I could clap my hands right now, I would.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
That's one of your favorites.
That's one of my favorites.
Yes, I will have to be sure that piece reflects you along with a mural. There,
Yeah.
you are a person who has their picture on the Newport levee on the wall on a mural.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Mr. Granville Ingle had a speaking engagement with an art class, Mr. Fink's art class at NKU. And he asked me, he knew that I had graduated from NKU, and he asked me, would I go with him? And since I'm retired, I'm free. So I went with him, and after he spoke, Mr. Fink and a couple of the other teachers that were present were aware that I was an alumnus of NKU. They asked me, could I speak about Southgate School and what it was like when we transitioned to the inner city school, 4th Street. And while speaking, I shared with them what it was like at Southgate, how I felt very comfortable, very welcome, and encouraged to go as far as we could go, and the difference in the other schools. So after we took a break, Grandma said, Virenda, a couple young ladies are writing down everything you say. I said, they are? Bless their hearts. So after we had the meetings, the next year, a young lady named Jenna Earward, she now works at the, I call it the Old Covenant Community, the neighborhood, Greater Neighborhood Community Center. She has an art room there. She
Jenna.
developed the mural, and the mural was about really the teachers at NK at Southgate Elementary School and how they encouraged the students to go as far as they could. In fact, the mural's entitled Education Empowers. And it sure enough has empowered me to do things that would have been prevented to me. Number one, because I was a black female. Number two, I was a single mother of 7 kids. Plus, I did not have an education at that time, but thank God I hold 3 degrees now. And it enabled doors to be open to me. Like I was blessed to get a job while I was still in college at Northern Kentucky Legal Aid Society as a paralegal. I worked there for 14 and a half years. And the directors, Attorney Jim Croor, and Attorney Dick Collison, allowed me to work within the community, which helped me meet older adults to help further my understanding of how to work within the community. Mr. Bill Martin, Mr. E.G. Smith, there was another Smith that was heavily involved, Mr. Furman Knox, Miss
Isaiah Smith, is that who you
Isaiah Smith,
Smitty. Mm-hmm.
Miss Pauline Williams, Mrs. Knox, Miss Sheffield, and there were a couple older ladies that took me in their grips to show me how to work the community. So the things that I'm blessed to do, I had shoulders to stand on.
Yes.
To help me be successful. They taught me to be observant, to understand that sometimes when people come to the table, there's some people that come to the table with hidden agendas, and to watch out for that. What will cause a meeting to be successful? What will cause a meeting to not be successful? And taught me how to network. And some of those skills I taught my students at Holmes High School. I was blessed to be in the first alternative certification program at Holmes High School. Me and 9 other African-American people were put in that program. I did not want to be a teacher. I wanted to work with the Youth Service Center department because I love working with young people and I love doing groups. But they put me in the program and I taught school for 5 years. I'm hearing that I did an excellent job through the students because they still now come to me and thank me for what they learned from me.
Yes,
and I'm
they do.
very thankful that they listened to me. In fact, other teachers would send their students to me. If they had a problem with a student, they send that student to me. And in fact, they sent one student to me that I was being observed by the state. And they sent a kid to me, and he knew where to go at. He knew I had a special chair in my room for him, that if he came in and I was busy, he had to go there. This kid in the 7th grade told me, because I was forever on him, that he was going to embalm my body one day. Well, He is studying to be a funeral home director.
Wow.
Okay.
Oh, that's something.
And I didn't get his consent to call his name.
Uh-huh.
But he was forever into something. And but I just love him. I'm so proud of him. While at Holmes High School, excuse me, I was blessed to organize 5 youth groups. The first NAACP chapter in the state of Kentucky with the consent of Mr. Jerome Bowles, who is the district president. I got the consent from Mr. Moreland, who was the superintendent of Holmes High School of the Covenant in the school district, and Mr. Raymond Finke. I also was blessed to start an AP buddy club that was dealing with the black girls that was in the advanced program. Mr. Finke asked me to work with 11 black girls that were in the AP program. We were also blessed to start through Mr. Raymond Finke, Hands Across Campus, which was a diversity club. The following year, Miss Deborah Vance came to me and asked me to start a diversity club. She was the equity diversity officer, and I informed her that we already had a diversity club. So we changed the name from Hands Across Campus. It became from Hands Across Campus / Diversity Club. We also started a GSA club, Gay Straight Alliance. That club started because through the summer months, a young man would come to the school, and I sensed that something was going on, and I asked him personally what was going on. And he knew that I keep things confidential. That's why I don't never share his name. That he had a relationship of the same gender. And this other young person was acting like they no longer knew him, and he was getting ready to commit suicide. So I said to him, if I start a program to help young people such as yourself, would you be willing to come to the group, and please do not hurt yourself, and we will find someone to help you? And they agreed. So I asked the principal at the time was Mr. Maines, and he said, well, you're not the counselor. So send him to the counselor and to the youth service center department and the school psychologist. And I told him where he had to go. And he went, and he came back and he said, Miss Dottie, how did you know what was going on with me? They didn't know what was going on. And I didn't share anything with them, so you're stuck with me. And I said, thank you. So that's how the GSA got started. And then we also had a diversity club in the middle school. So I'm just very happy. I'm very blessed. Those students, my president, they were awesome. I trained them how to lead a group. And I left it to them. And then I would meet with them individually. And they had a checklist of the do's and don'ts to help them grow. And we traveled a lot. They had to dress a certain way. You know, you have to dress to impress. So if they weren't dressed the proper way, they knew I would take them home to dress. You know, and as a teacher, it's funny, a couple of kids would get mad at me. I would tell them what I needed from them in a paper. And we contracted for grades. I did not have anything under a C. You contract for the grade, and there were certain things you had to do to get that grade. And if you didn't do that, if it was in a paper, guess what? I would tear that paper up, and you had to do it over.
So they learned to write also.
Right, right.
That is great.
Right,
So creative with ways of reaching youth and reaching youth of color
yes.
too. You know, there's a different way of communicating.
Right,
Simply because the way that I was brought up is basically more cultural from an African American or a black person's perspective than, you know, counterparts who I had to interact with and who I went to school with.
Right.
So I commend you for being that observant and doing what you did in the school district. I believe at the time that you were there was when I was serving on the board.
On the board. Correct.
And I recall being so proud of the time when you all, I didn't realize how many it was. I recall Jim Humphreys, he was one of the graduates of that group. Jerome, was he part of that group at that time?
He did not work at homes. Okay. He was involved, but he was not a student. That got a job at Holmes High School. There was Jim Humphreys, Crystal Brown, Fred Harris, Jim's brother, Jim Humphrey, Demetrius Choice, and myself. And there were 3 Caucasian students who said they were Indian.
Oh.
Okay, because the grant was for minorities.
Yes.
And we were very, it's funny, we were very close. Very close. I mean, Jim Humphreys was good at reading people. And one day I was married, going through a terrible relationship, and I walked in class and Jim says, "Okay, what has he done to you?" And I said, "Jim, please don't start." He said, "Yeah, something's going on." And a couple of students would tell, "Jim, ain't nothing, she's okay, she's okay." And Jim said, no, she's not. But I really miss his friendship.
Yes.
And I'm thankful that his wife understood our friendship. She was awesome. She understood her husband. And he was a very caring, loving man that cared about the students as well as his classmates.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I can say that. He came from a good stock. His mother, Miss
did.
Josephine.
His mother,
yes.
Miss Josephine was awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I never had a chance to interview her before she passed, but she was one of my mentors.
She was an awesome Sunday school teacher.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about your involvement with the NAACP. That was one of the groups that you had mentioned that you worked with Mr. Bowles. From a perspective of just you know, the kind of person you are, the things you've done, what you've been involved with in the past, why was NAACP something that you felt like you needed to be a member of? And
excuse me, I'm sorry.
And I believe you're more than just a member, that you're also an officer.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But in fact, I was a member of NAACP through Mr. Knox. I was a member of the Covington NAACP. And when that died out, there was not an NAACP. Then Mr. Bowles came to Northern Kentucky and revived the NAACP. What got me involved was I'm on my way over here to Covington for a meeting with the housing, because I had gotten involved with the East Side Neighborhood Development Program. Miss Pauline got me on the board of directors there. I was on my way to a meeting, and I saw my daughter Donna, her 2 daughters, Tashelle and Tori Watkins, my granddaughter Mariah Garland, and my grandson, Virinda Garland Jr., who was 4 years old, knocking on doors, giving out hand flyers. That touched me. And I said, if my 4-year-old baby can encourage people to get involved, I need to get back involved with NAACP. That's what got me involved.
All right. That was the youth in action, saying if they can do it, you know that you can do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And be a leader. And in that instance, they're demonstrating their leadership too.
Yes.
You have always been a person who has allowed others to, at least from my perspective, you've allowed them to demonstrate and show the best in them, in themselves. But you've helped to cultivate, just like you were talking about, some of the things that you would tolerate, you wouldn't. And you had an understanding from the perspective of being a single mother yourself, even though some of the kids may have had a mom and a dad both in their home, so many do not.
Correct.
From that perspective of being a single mom, could you tell us a little bit more about how that impacted you as far as working with the youth?
Whew. When as being a single mother, before I got in college, I set my children down, and we always had around the dining room table. After dinner, we talked, and I shared with them, I cannot tell you all to get a further education if I'm not doing it. So I want you all to at least give me a year in college. And one of my sons, well, you're not in college. I said, that's why we're talking. I'm getting ready to enroll in college, and I need your assistance. So if my head is in the book and you need me, you come and remove that book out of my hand and set him on my lap. That way you would get my full attention. When I got in college, it was rough. Having 5 children and dealing with their issues. And I had to do my homework. So what I did was I would take them to the park to let them play. And while they played, I did my homework. When we came home, they knew we had chores, so we did our chores, did dinner, whatever. And then when they go to bed, I would do my homework. I did not have a chance to study, but thank God I made good enough grades to graduate. Dr. Dotson would tell me, Virenda, you would be a straight A student if you studied. I said, but Dr. Dotson, you don't understand. You don't have 5 kids at home that you need to focus with. Even no matter what profession you go into, your first responsibility is to your children.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I focus on. If my children needed me, I'm going to give them their attention. And that's even today. I'm very blessed that they are all, the 5 that are living are very successful. And they know if they need me, I'm going to be there with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, because of the type of mother that you are, you have been amazing. You're an amazing woman yourself, and you have raised some amazing children.
Yes, I have.
And I know you've got those grands now. How many grands you have?
I am blessed with 26 grandkids. 19 are biological. I do not say step because I love my son-in-law's children like they're my biological children. In fact, one of his daughters that is married, when they ushered her grandmothers down the aisle, escorted down the aisle, I was escorted down the aisle. So that showed me love. Love is an action word to me. You can say you love somebody, but the action. When his children see me, they come and hug me like my other 19 grandchildren do. So I also have 25 great grandkids.
Wow.
15 are biological.
Huh.
The other 5 are my son-in-law's children's children, and they love me as well. When a couple of his grandkids come to our church at New Hope Christian Center, I generally sat in the back, and they see me. They come. Al said that the baby said, "We're gonna go sit with Grandma, with Gigi, because we don't want her to be alone."
All right.
So they come and sit with me, and they know I have snacks in the pocketbook. Yeah,
That's right.
So I truly, I tell people, when you have a grandchild, you love your children, but it's a different love. I remember you with your granddaughter. It's a different love. It's truly, you understand God's love for us. Because it's truly unconditional.
Yes.
They can get slide by with some things that your children couldn't.
That's right.
It's truly, and then the great kids are really awesome.
Well, that is great to hear.
Yeah.
Does your family do family reunions? Any part
Yes,
of it?
we do. In fact, we planted one July the 2nd, just with my mother's children. Between my brother Eugene and I, because my brother Tommy did not have any biological children, but he adopted Robbie Conrad. That's my niece through my brother Tommy and her children. So we're having a family reunion. Between my brother Eugene and I, we have over 60 people.
Wow.
Okay. Now, on my mother's side of the family, the Nelson, we have a family reunion every year. We're either in Danville, Illinois, or we're in Cup, Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Do you find then that the family reunion, of course, that's a piece of history and culture. So is there a lot of storytelling that goes on at your family reunions?
Not really, because the older ones, they're all deceased. When we kids, we see the older people, and now I'm part of the older group.
Right.
So the younger kids don't know us like we knew our older family members, because they would tell us what was going on, and then a couple of us did a research on our family, like I shared with you earlier. My grandfather, Tom Nelson, they don't like the word, but he was a mulatto. His dad was a Caucasian man, which is white. I don't use the word white because they're not white. This tablecloth is white. They're not that color. And my grandmother was a black lady. Her name was Mamie Mouse, and my grandfather was Tom Nelson. They had 11 children together. And my mother, Mamie Mouse, I don't know her mother's name, but my grandfather's father's name was Tom. My grandfather was a slave. He's the slave owner's child. That he took care of Papa, because Papa owned property. When he came from Mississippi, Como, Mississippi, and came to Cope, Illinois, Papa owned a lot of property.
Oh.
So that instilled in the family to have property. That's why I said when my mother came to this area, she thought my stepfather had property because she owned 3 acres of land and her home. So that instilled in us to own property.
All right. That's good. So that's been passed down through the generations,
Yes.
the generational learnings.
Yes.
the part of the solidarity, the part of the
Yes.
resiliency.
Yes.
Through the whole interview, you've been talking about parts that are solid, the solidarity pieces
Yes.
of keeping the family together, the
Yes.
traditions of understanding your sense of purpose.
Yes.
Is there anything that you would like to say in closing with this interview? And I would like to say that I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And I did want to know what were your hopes for the future. But in some closing remarks, can you share with us any of what your hopes are for the future?
My hopes for the future rest in the Word of God, especially when you look at Romans uh, 8 and 20, Romans 8 and verses 26 to 39. If you read down, especially at verse 30, it talks about where God pre-knew you. He knew you before the foundation, and that He's predestined you to accomplish things. I tell people, a lot of parents try to live their life through their child. And when they do that, they're forcing the child to not do who they are. God created them a special, unique individual to do things, to be creative, to bring Him back glory. If they're going to focus on what you want to do, that's not giving them the opportunity to be the person that God created them to do. So allow them to be themselves and help them to understand that, yeah, you may fall down, but get up.
Yes.
Because the only way that you can tell anybody anything is that you have experienced it. The trees have different branches, and we are the tree. Each one of us have a different skill that may overlap, but they can come together. When you work in a group, you must work as a group, in a unit. As the Amos 3 and 3 said, how can we walk together, two walk together unless we agree? We have to agree to disagree and don't take offense.
That's right.
People not being trained that. If you don't agree with what I say, then you really don't like me. Stop taking it personal. Because people see things differently.
Yes.
And that's the way we are. And stop being jealous. Because you have to realize God is the one that has gifted Miss Mullins to do the things Miss Mullins does, to bring other people together, to connect, to do what God wants them to do. And stop coming to the table with hidden agendas. What is the topic? And let's focus on that topic to bring unity. And look at the culture of the individual. Covington is not like Covington was when I came to work in Covington. It's a whole new set of individuals, and we got to meet those individuals where they're at. And understand their pain and help them to heal.
That's right.
That's what I'm about. I was blessed at New Hope to run 2 groups. One called Being All You Can Be for Christ, and the other one we was working on Blessed to Be a Blessing. Everybody can do something.
Yes.
The person that society has labeled retarded, I can learn from that individual. The child that's Down syndrome, I can learn from that child. Because they have, oh God, do they love.
Yes.
You can learn from anybody. When you stop learning, that's when you're dead.
Yes. I agree with you on that one. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate you taking the time to accommodate this interview. And I'm sure that this going into the Kentucky Historical Society archives, that others, I hope whomever accesses this video has as much enjoyment of watching it as I've had in listening to Miss Virinda Garland Doddy today for the interview for the Rural Urban Exchange Solidarity and Resiliency Project.
And thank you.
You're very welcome. Take care.